Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something on the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. And if you're enjoying the conversations here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching or listening. Or if you or somebody you know would like to be on the show and have a chat with me, feel free to reach out to me on a social media platform. That social media platform is the one that you're on, and I'm probably on it. And the best way to find out which ones that I'm on is to go to isaacl.dev, and you'll find me. All right. So with that out of the way, I'm looking forward to this. This is a person that I have a ton of respect for. They've done basically everything that you can imagine in the open source space, and I'm looking forward to having a chat with them about just tech in general. So my guest today is Patrik Svensson. Patrik, do you want to say hello? Introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. My name is Patrik Svensson. I'm living in Sweden. I'm a freelance or consultant, as you might say, programmer. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like open source. That's
Yes, and we're gonna talk about open source. I think a lot in this show. But what I want to hear from you, Patrik, is how you got started. Like, when did you realize that like technology was the thing for you?
yeah, that's a good question. I think it was my father. He did some programming. He had his own company, and he created like his own what's it called, accounting software
Oh, okay.
back in the I think it was the beginning of the 80s or end
Okay.
of the 70s. So I actually got to play with his ABC 800, a Swedish computer from a company called Luxor,
Okay.
a Swedish company from a town called Motala. So I learned a little bit of BASIC, and I was hooked immediately.
Yeah. No, I could imagine. Like, so the question I have for you then, so like, okay, so accounting software, like this is before like QuickBooks, I'm guessing. Like quick,
Yeah,
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 okay.
yeah, yeah. He had like this. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure QuickBooks was available for those Swedish computers that he
Okay.
he owned.
So
So
what
yeah,
was it about the computer? Like, was it the fact that it was just available and you were curious? Was it like the this is for me, is like because I got started like building like web pages with HTML. Like
yeah.
you do something and then like, all of this nonsense, like all this text that you're typing into this editor, and then you refresh or you build or whatever, and then you have a thing that is doing something. Was it like that kind of magic, or was it like you're just curious about how things work, so you just kept going at it?
No, I was. I remember I was fascinated. Like you type stuff, and you can control what it. I mean, this was very. This computer was like I think it had like 64 kilobytes of RAM or
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that, and a really basic proprietary BASIC interpreter.
Hmm.
So it was no fancy stuff like MS Basic or
Sure.
something like that. Um, and I just remembered that it felt so. I wanted to write text adventure games.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
so of course I started trying to do that. I learned if statements and go tos, and it was all a huge mess. And my father looked at it and said, "No, this is never gonna work.
Yeah.
Ah, you just watch me. I will make it work."
Interesting. Watch me. So, did your dad have like a computer science background? Like did he go to school for computer science, or like he literally just did something because he needed to build something?
No, yeah, he was a machine engineer. Like,
Okay, a machine engineer.
yeah. So he didn't. He wanted to build stuff to
Yeah.
use in his company. He was
Yeah.
really keen on computers early on.
Yeah,
Like,
it's fascinating to me, especially people that were building things with technology like in the 80s, or like in the it's fascinating to me because a lot of people there are from other disciplines, because computer science wasn't like a actual course of study for a lot of these folks. So like
yeah,
like using your father's example, hey, I need like accounting software and there's none that exists. So I'm just going to build it because I know how my company does accounting. I'm just going to build something so I don't have to like do all
yeah,
the manual writing of everything.
yes,
And it's always funny when you talk, like I've had people on this show that were like chemists and then they switched over, or engineering, they switched over. And it's funny that you think of the problems they're trying to solve back then as being like very simple, right? Especially compared to like problems now, but like they have
Yeah.
far less tools. So this is a random question for you, and I was just thinking of it. What do you think was a harder experience as a technologist? Trying to build something that was fairly simple without tools, or trying to build something complex with too many tools?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah,
The latter, I think.
yeah.
Building something complex with too many
Because
tools.
that's what we're living in today, right? Like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I do this talk, and like the talk basically it's for .NET Aspire if you really care about it, people that are listening.
yeah,
But like I talk about like all the tools that a developer needs to touch in order to just do something as simple as build a website, right?
yeah,
And that's just a website that you don't care about scaling and resiliency and all of that. And then once you care about that, there's even more tools that you have to worry about. And like obviously the it's for me to talk about Aspire, which is this kind of opinionated framework in .NET, and we don't need to get into that too much, but it's like the amount of like as a developer, like if I set up a new machine, it takes me like a bit. Even if I have all the scripts and I have everything and I know all the winget commands and everything, it still takes a non-trivial amount of time just to get all of my
yeah,
stuff, right? Um,
yeah,
and I always think it's like you've heard these stories about like, oh, I had to go to the computer lab and with my punch cards, and then I would hand in my stack of punch cards, and I would come back the next day to know if my program built. Those stories, right? And sometimes I think like, what's harder, that and having to wait, or like expecting just to be able to ship immediately?
yeah, yeah. No, I stand with my answer.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, I'm sure it was not simple back then either,
yeah,
but but all the tools were more constrained, and knew you. I mean, I never used punch cards or anything like that, but I can imagine that you were very limited in what you could do, so you had to constrain the problem.
yeah,
Now the problem never ends. Like
yeah.
it can be however big you want it to be. And to be honest, I've been thinking about what you said about before, because if I started using computers now, I'm not sure I would have enjoyed programming, because
That's
how do you even get in
yeah.
contact with programming today?
Well, I mean, that's
There
a
must be someone who.
yeah. Go ahead.
There's not like you turn on your computer and there's a basic prompt. The
Yeah,
only thing you can do is either like load a program or try to write some code.
yeah,
Today you need to download some interpreter. You need to know what an interpreter is or a
yeah.
compiler, and you need to download it. So I mean, I don't know. It's seems like it's much more complicated everything today.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot about because I don't know if you. I think we'll get a little bit into like when you realize like computers was like the way to have a career and make money, but like I haven't known any like in my entire life. Like the second that I was introduced to computers at a very young age, that's what I wanted to do. I don't know.
Yeah,
So like I've had these kind of thoughts in my head for a while now. It's like, well, if I didn't do computers, what would I be doing now? And I can't even fathom the idea because I've just like technology has been the thing that I've always gravitated towards. So like the idea of
yeah,
like not doing it is like something that's completely foreign to me. It's like learning a new language that there's like no dictionaries or no rules for that language. It's like a dead language, like trying to learn a dead language to me.
yeah.
So, and with that, I have this question for you. It's like, did you have any inkling at any point in time in your life that's like, oh, maybe I'll do something without computers?
Um, to be honest, I've never. I'm not. How can I say? Um, I didn't put much thought into it
Yeah,
when I was like studying at high school and stuff like that. I was a little I was a little bit like, yeah, I'm sure it will work. It's
yeah,
and then I realized that because I've always been like playing with computers,
yeah,
and then I realized, oh, you can work with programming.
yeah.
Yes, of course. Maybe I should try to do that.
Yeah. So, did you go to university or did you
Yeah,
go?
but
Yeah.
I went to it was a 4.5 year computer engineering.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, but
but
it was a
I
computer
dropped.
engineering degree. Like you didn't go for like I don't know, some other job like general engineering or something like that. It was very much like a
No,
computer engineering job.
no, yeah, but I dropped out like the second year. I
Oh,
got a
okay.
job in programming. So my dear friend Ralph, he asked me if I wanted to come to an interview, and then I just dropped out and I never went back.
Oh, well, it worked out. It worked.
Yeah.
So I guess that like my next question is like when I mean, obviously I think that's the point in time. Like when did you realize like there's money and it's a career? Because I think for a lot of people, they're so like to your point earlier, they're so fascinated with the computer, right? They're very curious about it. They're able to do these things that don't make sense how it works, but it just works. But they don't really think about it like actually being like a career or like I'm gonna be able to provide for my family. Like, was there a moment or was it that moment that you're talking about where your friend kind of offered you a job interview that you're like, oh, this can be a job for me and I can just like it can just do this for fun and for work?
Yeah, it was probably when I got my first paycheck. That's
Yeah,
probably when I realized that. Uh, I mean, it was an entry level salary I got, but
sure.
all my other jobs I had before, working in a factory, during the summers, been a personal assistant. I've worked in what's it called? Like a computer shop, like assembling computers.
Oh, like a
Some
help
hour
desk
after
or
work.
sort of thing? Yeah.
No, like actually assembling like
Oh, building
computers.
computers. Okay.
Yeah. So I never seen that much money in my life, and it was probably then I realized that,
Yeah.
oh yeah, maybe this is sustainable.
This is what I tell people that aren't in tech, right? Like the first paycheck that you get is kind of startling. And like, I think about how much money I made like when I first got out of school and like I laugh, I'm like, how did I survive on that amount of money? Because it wasn't very
Yeah,
much like for now. But I think about it occasionally, like my parents, for instance, right? Like, when I told my parents that I got a job and like it that like the amount of money is just laughable. And that's like your first job in tech. So hopefully you won't ever make less than that. And it's just crazy to me that there's this career field that literally like it terrifies you when you see like money for the first time because it's more than you could ever imagine.
yeah, absolutely. It's uh, yeah, like you said, I when I was studying, I was on student loans, so like 80% of that went to rent, and then you had like
Yeah.
maybe you had what in US dollars, maybe 150 US dollars
Yeah.
for the whole month, food,
Sure.
beer, everything. But you managed. I don't know
Yeah.
how, but you managed to like maybe you didn't eat
The best. Yeah.
that well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. What was your first job? Do you remember like the first program that you actually had to build like for that job?
yeah, it was. I started the job was at a company called NetOnNet in Sweden. It was like Sweden's. I think it was their first e-commerce platform. They sold like tech stuff. So, um, and I think the first application I wrote for them was they were going to launch in Norway, and they needed a way for employees at the customer service department to translate. They had some Norwegian. They hired some Norwegians, and they wanted a way to help translate all the products and product descriptions. So the first thing I wrote was a tool to help them with that. To like fetch rows from the database and display
Okay.
it and enter a translation and save it somewhere, and I don't know.
So like localization. So like you built like a localization tool to an extent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Are you fluent in Norwegian as well as Swedish?
oh no, 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 no,
No.
no, no,
So
no, no, no.
how did you do that? Like how did you I mean, this is completely off topic, but like that's a very
Uh,
interesting problem to solve, especially if you don't have like the necessary skills, right?
no, I mean, it could have been Japanese for all that matters. It was
Sure.
just like provide a tool for these people who spoke Norwegian that
I
they
see.
hired, so they could like sort of one field for Swedish, one field for Norwegian,
Okay.
and looking back at this today, it would have been better to just have an Excel sheet or something.
Sure,
But
that's funny.
but I was young and
But that's funny though,
stupid, I
because
guess.
like you've worked with companies for a long time. Like how many times have you seen a spreadsheet and you're like, this needs to be an app? Like the things that you're doing in this spreadsheet are absolutely disgusting. Like you should not be doing this, right? Like how many times have you seen that in your career? Tons, right?
I think I don't know. The older I get, the more I appreciate simplicity
Sure. Sure.
in things. So sometimes maybe things should be a spreadsheet
Yeah.
instead of an app. Maybe. Uh,
Yeah, I had this whole conversation with somebody years ago about access databases, right? And I honestly believe still to this day that an access database is literally like one of the greatest like innovations that like in my opinion that is like existed in like business workers being able to be successful because like you pointed at some data source and then you just can let folks like build their forms, build their reports and do everything. Obviously scaling and all of that and sharing is challenging, but it's the simplicity thing to your point is just like so important, right? And I think that as we get more and more complicated, not just for tools for developers, but tools for people in general, like
yeah.
simplicity is just it's really refreshing.
Now, when I think about it, I have a friend. His wife is a chemical engineer, and he told me that they have an Excel document that takes 5 or 10 minutes to open because it has like I don't know. Now I'm making up a number, 800,000 lines with
Sure, sure.
data, which they share and open, and that
Yeah.
should probably be some kind of application when I think of
Yeah.
it.
Sure. Oh, I mean, yeah, I think that there's definitely use cases. Like I think I remember this project that I had when I was a consultant years ago where again, like you look at the file and the Excel file is like 400 megs or something like that and you're just like this should
Yeah,
not be a thing. Like this really should not be a thing. But it worked for the customer and they didn't realize they could have better experiences if they weren't in Excel. But again, simplicity. I have these tools already. I might as well be taking advantage of them.
yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably a case by case scenario thing.
Yeah.
You know.
A question that I have
Uh,
for you then is so you have this so you're working in tech. You're building these applications that are kind of like line of business sort of applications. When did you first encounter like this idea of like sharing software? Or like software available on the internet or software like I guess what people now call open source. Like it wasn't. It's like the open source today isn't what the open source was 20 years ago. But like when did you realize that there was like this whole community of people that were sharing software, using each other's software, and building in the open?
yeah, can't remember exactly when, but I'm pretty sure it was my friend Ralph, which I told you about
Yeah,
before, who got me the job. He was very into stuff like that. He was like into open source, and I'm not sure if he contributed anything, but I know that he was big into Linux and compiling stuff
yeah.
himself, and I think he introduced me to open source. Yeah,
Yeah, was it like so I remember like Codeplex was like the big thing, which was like, you know,
yeah,
people would
yeah. I
just
think
throw code out there. That was like a Microsoft owned tool. Like, but there's been other tools
yeah.
other than that.
That's a what's the that's a blast from the past, or
Yeah.
how is the expression?
Yeah, no blast from the
Codeplex. I
past for
haven't
sure. Yeah.
yeah, haven't heard that name in a while.
Codeplex, yeah.
Yeah, no, but it was yeah. I can't remember that much actually. I remember I created a GitHub account in 2010 or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, whenever I remember people talking about GitHub and my initial thought process was like, "Oh, cuz somebody explained it to me a very interesting way." They were like, "Oh, it's a place for people to share their code and like they talk." And I immediately thought like this is at the point in time when like social networks were becoming a big thing. And I
Yeah.
immediately like kind of equated to, oh, so it's like social media, but for like coders, like that. And I immediately thought like, oh, that's a silly idea. Like, why would that work? And obviously, I was quite wrong. Like, um, because at the time, like I wasn't even using Git. Like a lot of the source control I was using like was SVN or like Visual Source
Yeah.
Safe. Like that would, or like maybe sometimes like if I worked for a company that used like Team Foundation server, we would use that, or Team City or something. So like the
Yeah.
idea of Git wasn't even in my brain. So like when I first started hearing about GitHub, I was like, oh, is this like some new like way for source code management? Because I wasn't even aware.
Yeah, I like you said, the first source what's it called, feels like I'm having a stroke now. Version control system at, that I encountered was, I think it was source safe actually,
Yeah.
because we learned nothing about source control in school.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and then CVS and SVN,
Yeah.
Perforce, TFS. Did I say TFS?
Yeah, Team
Yeah,
Foundation server, yeah. Like
yeah, and then Git.
I think it really
So
depends too, like on what kind of companies you worked for. Like if you worked for
yeah,
companies that were Java shops, you might use one particular tool.
yeah,
If you're like a Microsoft or .NET shop, you probably use Visual Source Safe because that was kind of like the de facto tool, and then you would use
yeah.
Team Foundation Server or whatever. Um, I was talking to somebody the other day because we were talking about like random like tech tools that we used back in the day, like just as like
Hmm.
a blast in the password thing. And I was like, oh yeah, I used to use this thing called like Tortoise SVN, and like I looked it up to see if it was still a thing, and it's still a thing. Like I thought that was kind of cool. It's like still around, which I mean, it's
Fun fact: there's a tortoise Git as well.
is
Mm.
there?
Oh, yeah, I'm not sure. I actually spoke. It's funny that you mentioned this because I actually, uh, me and my friend, we were joking around that. Um, yeah, it's last release was last year in October,
I'm gonna have to
so
look.
it's still a thing.
Yeah, so basically, is it?
So
I'm guessing it's like the same exact thing as Tortoise SVN, but it just uses the Git protocol.
yeah, it says Tortoise Git provides overlay icons showing the file status, a powerful context menu for Git, and much more.
Well,
It says on
I'm
them.
gonna have to install that just to see. Like that sounds like fun because I really enjoyed
Yeah,
towards SVN because you know,
and next time you write in documentation, you write all the documentation for Tortoise Git. So
per perfect. That sounds like a great idea. So so you when did you like? I guess the next question that I'm curious about is like for folks who don't know Patrick, we'll talk about what he's built in a bit, but like let's just set some context. Like you've built some pretty popular things, right? Um, so, but obviously with that, you probably like you have this passion for this sort of space of like building in the open and building things for other developers and so on and so forth. Like, when did you really find that niche? Like, when did you find out that that was something you were interested in? Was like building like tools for developers to help them be more successful.
um, I don't think my motivation is I never done it to just to do something for others. All the open source project I started has been like something I want to, like a problem I need to
Yeah,
solve, or something that I want to build for myself. And then open sourcing it is just like a bonus.
yeah,
Like people can help out, other people can use it. Maybe it solves someone else's problem. So uh, yeah, exactly what was the question? I think I got
yeah.
sidetracked
Like,
in
I get
my
the question is
thoughts.
like when did you realize that it was something that you were interested in?
Yeah, that's what. I don't know, to be honest. It just felt so when you started, like because I've been writing side projects for forever, and things I've been using in like my hobby projects and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And I think when I started like open sourcing stuff that I wrote, I think it just felt natural, especially when people notice it and start contributing, and you get like they tell you about bugs that you
Hmm.
didn't even know that you had.
Yeah.
That must, I think it always felt like, oh, this is a good thing. But I can't think of a specific like situation where
Yeah.
I discovered that, oh, this is something I want to do. It's just felt natural, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You made a comment earlier that I find very interesting, right? Like, and I've talked to enough people that have built a lot of open source and well-known open source projects, and the sentiment is always like, I don't build it. I never built anything with like the intent for it to be popular. I've always built something for
Yeah.
myself, and I showed it to somebody, and they've been like, "Oh, I could use that," and then you turn it into a thing, and then it becomes a thing. So I guess
Yeah.
the question that I have is like, do you think that's a mandatory requirement of building successful open source? Is really just building something for yourself and then and then finding out that people also want it? Or do you think that there is a path where it's like, I have this interesting idea and I think that everybody could take advantage of it, right? Like coming at it from like a community first versus a personal first.
Yeah, I think so. I think that if you have a problem that you think can be good for the community, you're probably thinking can be good for you as well. Like I would find it very demotivating building something that I couldn't use. Like oh, I'm gonna go and build a, I don't know, a document database.
Sure.
Okay, that maybe that's something you do for fun, but like I wouldn't want anyone to actually use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And often you see like especially on LinkedIn and places like that, like this is how you get involved in open source.
sure.
And I always find it a little bit strange because like why would you want to do that to yourself?
Yeah. No, I mean it's a valid thought, right? Because I mean, but I just find it very interesting that I think we as developers we're all always looking to figure out ways to cut corners. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's like, if there's low-hanging fruit or things that we do consistently, we're probably going to build something that helps automate that because I think the trope is that developers are lazy, right? And
Yeah.
I think what ends up occurring is you build something and you put like I think like a lot of people now like they just throw out their stuff on GitHub, like their musings on GitHub, like even if it's not going to be used, and then they get some people to use it, and then you actually have to like build a project around it, right?
Yeah.
So like I guess my question for you is like now because you're at the point where you kind of know how to build these projects, so you come up with an idea and for yourself for something you're working on and you build it. So when you first publish it to GitHub, do you have a sort of thought process on how you should be creating that project? Because like, or do you just kind of throw your code out there and then let it like grow organically? Like, I guess my question is the idea fully fledged in your head when you throw it out to GitHub?
Yeah, I think so. I always use some kind of. I always put my projects on projects on GitHub,
Yeah.
but mostly they're private. And if they reach a point where I think other people can use it, like Spectre.Console was private for. I actually recreated a repository because it was so messy
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, with the commit history and everything. And I was like, I can't release it like this.
Sure.
So it was first when I realized that uh, uh, I want to push this to NuGet so I can use it in all these
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, so that's a good question too. Like, so for folks that aren't familiar with the .NET ecosystem, like NuGet is like the package manager
Yeah,
of
the
sorts,
package
right?
manager.
Yeah, so it's like npm or it's like pip or whatever, right? But it's for .NET specifically. You made an interesting point about like NuGet. Like, at what point, like, so you put stuff out on NuGet like for personal use, which I find interesting, right? Because
Yeah,
I've always thought I was like NuGet is like, okay, once you reach a thing, I'm gonna share this with people. You put it on NuGet, but like if you have like a shared utility, you'll throw it out on NuGet and use it
yeah,
without ever talking about it or showing it otherwise.
yeah. That happens. Yeah. I mean, the code is public, but
Yeah,
I might not talk about it. But like Spectre.Console started like I'm just using that as an example
Yeah.
because that's the most recent one. Uh, like a one file thing
Yeah.
that rendered some. It was a port of a project called Rich from the beginning for Python from the Python ecosystem. So it was like a one file with a lot of classes and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of like, I need to clean this up, I need to fix it,
Yeah.
and I publish it because I
Yeah.
realized that. But yeah, I published a lot of NuGet packages. If you go to my, you can probably find some stuff that I
Yeah.
haven't talked about. Maybe,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess because I'm fascinated because when you get to like, I think there is like a critical mass when you realize like, oh, this needs to be like an actual like living organism with an open source project, right? Like you get
Yeah,
enough contributions, whether they're people issues or people want to commit code via pull requests or people are talking about it or it's being used via some package manager. Eventually it kind of takes its own life, right? Like it has like its own thing. Like and you realize like, oh, like this is much larger than the idea that I initially had. Um so you've built a lot of these sort of projects over time and the first one was Cake, right? Like that was the first one that
yeah.
kind of took control. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts as like when you're building Cake, and for folks that don't know what Cake is, it's kind of like a build system for C sharp, similar to Make, which everybody knows, like in the C++ world.
Uh,
No,
yeah, well, kind
is that an
of.
oversimplification? But like, if you want to talk about like what Cake actually is, go for it.
It's more of an orchestration.
Sure.
You can do what Cake does in Make, but Make normally acts like on input files,
Yeah.
and you create a dependency on tasks that has files associated with them. So you can say like this build task, you should, yeah. Cake is more like only the task
Yeah.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we create a like a dependency graph, and then we just traverse it in the what's it called, topological sort order. So from the first node to the last node.
Yeah.
So uh, yeah, that's Cake.
Yeah.
But I understand. I understand what
Yeah.
you say.
I was trying to
You're correct, but
I was trying to
yeah, you
oversimplify it,
yeah.
right? Um, I guess my question around Cake then is like, when did you realize that this was a very big thing? Like not like obviously, you're using it or you're using a version of it for yourself and maybe a smaller team or a smaller group of people, and then it builds groundswell and then it starts to get adopted by large companies, starts to get like used by other projects that are fairly well known. Like what was that?
Yeah.
Was there a point that you remember where you were talking to like the other folks that were working on it? You're like, oh, this is a thing now.
Yeah, it it actually kind of organically.
Yeah.
I remember I put it out. The reason why I built it was that I tried to introduce some kind of build system at my client. So I think it was I started with, I can't remember the exact order now, but I think I suggested that we use Fake. Uh, but I didn't know F sharp that well, and my colleagues didn't either. So yeah, that was the order. So we tried Rake, the Ruby, um, and that didn't work. So I thought, well, maybe we can do this in C sharp because I read about the Roslyn compiler had been open source. No, it wasn't open source, but they published it on NuGet. So that's how it started.
Yeah.
And then it just grew. I think I posted about it on Twitter or something like that. And Matthias Karlsson, uh, his handle is dev lead on most
Yep.
platforms.
Yep.
He picked it up, and I think he's done a lot to like um, make it as. I mean, it's not a super big project, but it's.
I mean, I think of it maybe as like I think it all in context, right? Like if you are in the .NET ecosystem, you might not have used it, but you've heard about it, or you might have come across it like in a very very small subset, right? Um, but yeah, like obviously as it pertains to like the holistic, like all of tech, yeah, like it's not as large as some other things. But I think that
Yeah,
I think that it it is enough from a size perspective for it to be acknowledged. And I think, when you have big projects like that, like there are all these other things other than writing code that become essential to the project's success, right? And a
Yeah,
lot of the
yeah,
and a
absolutely.
lot of these things are, I don't know about you, but things that developers don't really enjoy doing. Documentation, figuring out contribution guidelines, all these sort of things. Figuring out like licensing, like okay, now that this thing is a real thing, like do we want to use the same license, or do we want to figure out if there's a commercial aspect of it, or and all those sort of things, right? And it turns
Yeah,
into kind of like a business to an extent. Like, was there a point in time where you folks were like, "Oh, we really need to like make this thing like a full featured product." Like not charge money for it, but include really rich documentation, have scheduled releases, making sure that you have the right amount of support across different platforms. Was there a discussion around that, or was it just organic as well?
I think that when we joined the .NET Foundation, we started
Yeah,
to understand. We learned. I think we learned a lot about maintenance when we joined the .NET Foundation, because then we had to we never thought about something like CLA, like um, contributor license agreement,
yeah,
where the users actually sign over the rights to the project to use the source code.
yeah,
That never crossed our minds before that. Now, of course, we know better, but stuff like that and documentation and most of it grew pretty organically. I think like we felt ourselves that we needed documentation, but because after a while, when the project grows, you start to forgetting stuff,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
like find yourself wanting documentation for your own sake.
yeah,
So yeah, but there were some things that all these license agreements and stuff like that we learned from joining the .NET Foundation back in, I don't know, 2017,
yeah,
18, something like that.
sure. And then I think the final question that I have, like around cake specifically, and I think it can go to like any of the things that you've worked on, is like, this idea of like, is it complete or not, right? Because I think one thing that
Yeah,
I've always kind of been challenged with open source projects is I think all so open source projects have a purpose, and after a certain amount
yeah.
of time, they reach that purpose, and then after that, then you're just adding things that probably aren't necessary or whatever, right? And I guess my question for you is like, do you see like finality to open source projects ever? Where you're like, okay, this thing exists, and like if a new version of the framework that it support that comes out, or if new bug fixes or whatever, but I'm not going to add new features, or this thing doesn't need new stuff added to it. Do you believe in that, or do you believe there's always room for these projects to grow?
I don't think open source projects are ever finished, to be honest.
Sure.
I can take Cake as an example. We started with the Roslyn compiler. It
Hmm.
was part of you could get it like a NuGet package, and it was very, I can't remember, but I think it was pretty primitive in comparison to what Roslyn looks like today,
Sure.
the APIs and such. Then we started using it ourselves, me, Matthias, and Gary Evan Park,
Yep.
another maintainer. And we started using Linux computers more and went to mono. And there was this guy from Microsoft. Now I'm so sorry, but I forgot his name. But he works on the Maui team now, I think. Yeah, he contributed like a mono backend for Cake, and then it was .NET Core.
Yeah.
And if you remember the .NET Core 1, 2, 3, there was a lot of internal changes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So there was a lot of work like supporting every new version. Then at .NET 5, everything stabilized a bit. and then we decided to like create a new runner where you could build your projects like a .NET project or a normal CS Pro back in 2016, maybe.
Yeah, 16 or
No,
17. No, so .NET
I can't.
Core 2 came out in 2018, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it must be 28,
yeah,
something like that. And we did all this because we used it ourselves.
yeah.
Like Matthias, he had clients running it. I had clients running it. So like, oh yeah, they want to update their .NET SDK. Oh, we can't run on the new SDK.
Mhm.
Or there were dependencies that like, yeah. So there's a continuous work that you do.
Yeah,
If you don't have like a reason to work on it, it will die.
yeah,
But as long as you're dependent on it, you will
sure.
like. So of course, people like send a pull request or something like that. Oh, I use this external tool that I want supporting Cake,
Sure.
which I never used myself.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course we can add it. So of course there are things like um, sorry, donated to
sure,
us,
sure.
but I would say most of the project. I mean, I still use Cake today.
Yeah,
I mean, today there's a lot of great alternatives as well. There's um, but I'm a bit nostalgic.
yeah.
I like
Well, I
Cake
mean, it's also
still.
one of those things where
So
it's a tool that works for you, so why put in the effort to learn a new tool?
yeah, absolutely. And now we're building support for the stuff in .NET
Yeah,
10, the stuff. So you will have IntelliSense in your normal um, Cake files.
yeah,
So like you can more or less like just rename the file extension and yeah, everything just works.
yeah,
So it's a evolution. That's a good description.
yeah.
Uh,
But it's also too like, I mean, and I don't know if you're similar like I am, but there is also like a level of interest that you have, right? Eventually your interest shifts into maybe something else, right? And you build something like you're like, oh, I have this other idea that I want to put a little bit more of my focus into, and you kind of transition a little bit off of the thing that you've been working on. Um,
yeah.
and you know, I'm curious as to like that feeling because these projects they're kind of like children to an extent, right?
Yeah.
The idea is conceived and then it kind of grows and then it turns into kind of a version of an adult and you have to let that adult go and do whatever, right? Um, so like w- when you decided, or not when you decided, that's not a good way to phrase it. Like when you came up with when you had an other idea, like was it a little hard at first to like not think about the other thing as much when you're building the new thing?
No, no,
No?
no, like I said, as long as I'm using the stuff
Yeah.
myself, and with Cake, we have a great and still have a great maintainer team. We're still
Mhm.
like pushing stuff all the time. Um, so it's just Cake has been really easy to just let. I haven't let it go. I'm still involved a
Yeah.
lot, like in discussions and planning and stuff like that. And like with everything, it goes in waves.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need something, so I make a lot of work, and sometimes I just want to focus on something else. And I think the solution to building a sustainable open source project is, I think, to have a maintainer team and to like have to involve other people who also uses it a lot.
Sure.
Then it will sort itself out, I think.
Yeah. No, that's fair. And I think one thing too that I really appreciate about you is like you obviously put a lot of your career has been a lot in the Microsoft ecosystem and you've built a lot of things for in the .NET world, but like you also like and I'm curious to know like what was your initial fascination with Rust because you do a lot of stuff in Rust as well. Like What was it about? Like, was it just you had an opportunity to learn it or you were curious about it? Like, what was it about Rust? Because obviously, when you think about .NET versus Rust, they're very different, right?
Yeah. I worked at a company called it wasn't called, it still exists, but Toby. They're building eye trackers. So I was part of their API team. So I wrote I wrote the integration. I was part of the team that wrote the integration for like Windows Hello for their eye tracker and stuff
Okay.
like that. So I've done some C and C++ professionally, and there was a colleague there who said something about Rust, and I, I was very interested in it when he described it because it sounded like a solution to everything I hated about C++,
Sure.
more or less, like proper move semantics and like safe C and all that stuff. And then I went on paternity leave and I downloaded the Rust book. And I mean, I don't think I ever used Rust professionally, but I think it's fun. I
Yeah.
like to tinker
Yeah.
with it. So it's the same. Started a bit with Swift now
Yeah.
as well. Haven't used it professionally either, but I think it's. I mean, I love the C sharp and all
Hmm.
that, but I think it's healthy to uh, try other stuff from time to
Yeah.
time.
Because that was kind of where I was going with it. It's like, I think that there is something to say about like a little bit of the pain that's involved learning something new, right? Because you do have that moment where you're like, I could probably do this in the tool that I'm more familiar with and it'll be faster, but this tool is better for whatever reason, right?
Yeah,
And I'm curious as to like when so now like you like Rust and C Sharp and Swift and so like when you think about building something like from scratch, like do you actually have to put a little bit of thought into like what tools you're going to use, or do you just say I think this is the right tool, I'm going to start here, and if you're wrong, you're wrong?
it's actually a good question because right now me and some friends are starting a little uh, uh, company,
Okay.
building a thing. And there's actually one thing we've been discussing that we're going to build in Rust because of the low memory footprint and safe concurrency and stuff like that. Because he knows Rust a lot better than me,
Mhm.
and so of course it's good to know the options, like to do, when you have to do trade-offs, uh, like to know that there are. I mean, if all you know is TypeScript, it's gonna be you're gonna just
Yeah.
think about the problem from a TypeScript
Yeah.
perspective or
Yeah.
a C sharp perspective. Uh, but to be honest, .NET 9 is so good that I mean, it's really fast
Yeah.
now, and especially with the AOT parts, and so I'm seeing less and less reasons to like, oh, why should I do it in this language? I can just use C sharp.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm the same way with C Sharp. It's like I haven't run into very many problems that I've been trying to solve that I couldn't use C Sharp for. So I've been less inclined to like, like I played around with Go, I played around with Rust a little bit. Obviously, like I've
yeah,
had to write things in JavaScript and Python, right? But like to your point, like it it's .NET is getting so good now, or has been so good, that I really struggle to be like, oh, I really shouldn't be using .NET for this purpose,
yeah.
which is kind of
I,
scary, right?
I actually like it. When was it? Like 2020 or something like that. I wrote Rust it's an open source project. I'm not sure if I archived it yet, but I'm supposed to. But it was like it's called Duck. It was because
Okay.
we needed a tool at work to like show the status of our builds, and we had some code running in like Team City and some code running on I think it was a GitHub Actions. Yeah, two different source code providers. So I wrote this tool. We had the configuration files with repositories and it would show the build status of all the branches on the dashboard on the TV. And we also had like integration with like the Philips Hue lights. So we got like a green and red signal and stuff like that. And we hosted this on a Raspberry Pi. So
Mm,
I'm not sure, but I don't think .NET was capable of running on a Raspberry Pi back then.
sure.
So that's why I wrote it in Rust, and it worked really well.
Yeah.
But if I was gonna do the same thing today, I would definitely just write it in C# and be
Yeah.
done a
Yeah.
week earlier.
No,
So
yeah, I agree. Like, whenever I talk about .NET to people that don't really haven't been paying attention, it's like it runs anywhere. You can put it on your fridge, you can put it on your watch, you can put it on a TV, blah
yeah,
blah blah, right? Um, like, so I'd like to talk a little bit about like what you're working on these days. So like one thing, like you've been building this amazing tool, like visualization tool for like command line based applications called Spectre.Console, which I told you before we got started, like I use it on everything. Like, what was the initial you talked a little bit about it, is like you had the need for it. But when you talk about like adding like new stuff to it, like when you think about it, like what is your thought process around that? Because like there is this balance between turning like a console like should this just be a web app instead of a console app, right?
yeah.
Like how do you kind of balance that decision making?
Uh, Good question. I mean, I've write a lot of console apps in my day job, like
Sure.
for imports or exports of data, and you know. So that was actually the reason why I started Spectre.Console, because I had this. My company is called. The reason why it's called Spectre.Console is my company is called Spectre Systems.
Sure.
You know, Spectre from the James Bond movies.
Yep.
Like if they have a IT department or something like that. It's a joke. Um, so I wrote this command line library that I published, which I wanted to use with my clients because, yeah. And in that library, I had this reason for visualization, and I was like, I really hate how this code looks.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
yeah. So then I started that library. Like I wrote this, like I told you before, like just one file, 50 classes, port of the rich project, which I
Yep.
just dumped into it. And so you asked me like when should I use what how do I decide if it should be
Yeah.
a web
Yeah.
app or console app?
Yeah, so like
Like
I guess
in
the primary reason that I ask is like
yeah,
because it goes back to the question is like right tool for the right job, right?
yeah. To be honest, I never reach for a web app if I want to build something
Sure.
like a tool. I Yeah, it's mostly console apps to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the fastest way to get started because there is a little bit of ceremony with like getting a web app up and running, right? And if it's just
Yeah,
something for yourself, like, and again, Spectre Console like gives you like it gives you tables, it gives you formatting, it gives you progress tracking, it gives you all these things, right? Which are sort of like web experiences, but from a console perspective, which is pretty fascinating. So I guess with that, like I think it's a good transition to like the some of the new thing that you're working on, that the stuff around OpenCLI. Like obviously you love the command line. It's very clear, right? Why did
yeah.
and we were talking a little bit about this before we got started about like sometimes you look at things that come out and you're like, why doesn't this exist yet? What was your thought process around the idea for OpenCLI? And obviously talk a little bit about OpenCLIs because I think there's value in talking about what it is as well as what value it brings.
Yeah, absolutely. OpenCLI is what Open API is for web apps.
Yeah,
OpenCLI is that for CLI apps. So it describes the interface which you interact with the command line interface. Uh, and it's of course it's not my idea, so I don't want to give that
sure,
impression.
sure.
But I was invited to, as part of the Spectre Console team, I was invited by Kathleen Dollard. and John Sequeira and what's his name, Diego Colombo, to join. Like they had these bi-weekly chats with the community, and they invited me because of my work with Spectre.Console, because they wanted input on the rewrite on the system command line library.
Yeah.
And there was of really interesting conversations in those chats. And so, and I remember at several times they talked about like having this like structured interface for CLI apps. And I really loved that idea because I could see so many would make it simpler to document CLI applications. Like if you want to generate Markdown or things like that, you could have something that runs in a like CI server generating the documentation. You could generate like statically typed clients to call external programs. Like I want to run FFmpeg
Sure.
from my application. I just take this OpenCLI specification, run this tool, and generates a client that I can use like in my program. But nothing happened with it. So this summer I had some time over, so I was thinking I would really want to see this. And my superpower is that I'm not afraid of like people thinking I have hubris or something like that.
Sure.
So I just like, no, I'm gonna do it. And yeah, I just want to put something out there and see if there's an interest. I found similar um, suggestions, uh, but most of them, personally, I don't think is very. How can I say this diplomatically?
You could say it like well
I
thought
don't.
out, like it's not well thought out.
Well, yeah, well thought out.
Yeah.
So I decided to just like take some inspiration from OpenAPI. They have a great specification, and just write something that I think could be used by a majority, because there's a lot of like no you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Windows applications, for example, they have a tendency to not follow like the POSIX
Sure. Sure.
standard,
Yeah.
like the GetOps stuff. But I think right now, I mean, it's far from complete, but I think we have something now, a draft that can be used to describe a majority of the applications. And there's so many improvements you can do, of course, but I really want something out soon.
Yeah, and I think the overall concept of like, hey, we should all be building command line based utilities a similar way. Like, you know, because as a developer, if you're building a command line app, there are a handful of things you need to think about. It's like, okay, how do I handle arguments? How do I handle errors? How do I handle these things, right? And for a
Yeah,
long time, it's just been like, okay, the developer decides how to do all those things. And I've run into it like, because I unfortunately, like, I have to interact with a bunch of different command line based applications a lot as a part of my job, right? And all of them do things a bit differently. Even something as simple as like, how do I get the version of it?
yeah,
Something as simple as that is like, okay, do I use just version dash dash version dash v whatever, right? And
yeah,
even something as simple as that, it's pretty shocking to me that there hasn't been some standardized thing to like these like I don't know, this is the gospel. This is how you do these things. And I'm glad that at least in our little small area of tech and .NET, like there's steps being made to kind of standardize those things.
yeah, absolutely. And I think System Command Line has done a great job with like, because it's a popular library and they have really been adhering to the, is that the correct word, adhering
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
the to like the old getops and uh, like getops rules, like option bundling and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great what's the word, sorry, it feels I'm speaking English all day with my colleagues, but it's
No,
always
no,
for
I
me
mean
like
I understand I understand it's also getting late for you too, so.
no, my brain is like three cycles behind. No, what was I gonna say? Sorry, I lost the.
Yeah, we were talking about a system called command line and some of the work that's been done there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what I wanted to say is that system command line is like a great um, fundament. Do you say that fundament? Like
fundamental or like building block or
yeah, block for applications, because if people use that, it will guarantee that people from other platforms, across platform,
yeah,
people will like understand how it works. It's not like MS Build, for example, which has its own conventions, and
yeah,
or PowerShell,
yeah.
which is just like. So I think it's the future is looking bright.
Yeah, I mean, especially since we're moving into this world, like, I mean, I think there's a long time where it's like, okay, you were a Windows machine and you use PowerShell or maybe command line. And or if you were a Linux-based machine and you use Bash or whatever, SH or
Yeah,
whatever it is, right? And now I think we're getting to this point where you can run PowerShell on Linux. You can
yeah,
they're like you can run Bash in Windows. Like it's like all of these different, I guess, uh thought processes around like console, like interacting with the console that are kind of merging. So it
yeah,
it would it would be very beneficial if like there was one standard approach for everything. Obviously, we're still a ways out from all of that, but I think building apps specifically, like just a little bit of thought into okay, what are the canonical things that go into building a console application, regardless of what kind of app it eventually becomes? Those things don't change. And I think that
yeah,
your interpretation is like Open API has done this with APIs, right? Like yes, you can do tons of things with
yeah,
APIs, but really this is like at least the base level definition of what an API does. And the same thing with console applications.
yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm reaching for with OpenCLI, and I want to like say that I don't have hubris.
Sure.
But no one done it, so I just put it out
Yeah.
there to see like if does people have interest in this, and I would love to like, because right now it's hosted under the Spectre.Console organization, but I mean I would love to like having more people involved,
Yeah.
maybe moving to some kind of foundation or something like that that could like
Mhm.
oversee it
Yeah.
at some point. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the GitHub repository for it and you look at the discussions, there's plenty of discussions going on and people are having conversations. And I think that it shows that there's enough interest, right? To go back to our conversation we've had a few times now, where it's you build something because you think you're going to benefit from it. And then once people find out about it, they're like, yeah, like I want some of that. I want to be a part of that as well.
yeah, absolutely. I actually got contacted by both two people from the .NET team, that Shathusk and uh, sorry, I need to. I can't remember his name, which is really embarrassing because I spoken with him several times. Let me check really fast.
Yep, no worries.
Uh, Richard Lander.
Yeah, yeah,
No, I haven't been speaking with him. That's why I can't remember.
okay,
But both him and Shathusk. And they haven't promised anything, of course, or anything like that. But I find it interesting that they're like interacting with the community. I
yeah,
think it's really it shows what open company Microsoft uh, is in many ways in
yeah.
open source.
I think it also shows the fact that how well respected you are in the space too. Like, I think that it's you know, you said you don't have hubris, but I'm going to give you a little bit of hubris for the moment. Like, you've done some very impactful things for a particular community, so it makes sense that people would think of you as a subject matter expert or thought leader or whatever you want to whatever name you want to give yourself or don't want to give yourself because you're a modest person. But like it goes to show
Yeah.
that it's like people are engaging with you because they value your opinions, which I think is important to call out as well.
Um, Thank you. Like you said, I'm pretty probably a little bit too modest, but
Sure.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
nice
it's
to hear.
no, I've told you this a few times. Like you've built things that have helped me be better as a developer, and I'm not the only person. So I think that there's something to say in that in of itself.
That's very nice of you to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I think one of the as we wrap up, I think one of the things I really appreciate about talking to folks like you is, you come from a place of like, I just want to make developers' lives a bit better. And as we wrap up, I'd love to kind of get your thoughts as like, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning about like tool sprawl and like what the life of developer is now. Like, what do you see like the best way for a developer to be successful in like for now and for like the near future?
Ooh. Yeah. I don't know. I should probably say something about AI, shouldn't I?
Sure, sure.
Everyone is talking about it.
We haven't talked about AI what yet, so
No, I'm kind of bearish still on AI. I'm holding out, but I think being curious, trying to not get stuck with one like ecosystem or with one thing, trying to look outside your comfort zone.
sure.
That's probably good suggest good advice, regardless of profession almost.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think, to follow kind of your backstory a little bit is like just being curious about how things work and finding the areas that you find interesting. And yeah, like those things sometimes like they change. Like you talked about AI, like and I think developers, a lot of things that were important for developers 5 years ago aren't as important now because of AI or whatever. Um, but I think that being curious in general is only going to be beneficial to anybody in this space.
yeah, maybe I'm not following my own advice there, since I'm not curious about AI.
Yeah,
Mm.
but I think it's good to be skeptical too, right? Like,
Yeah,
but I think you're I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, you know, not focusing so much on trends or hype or what have you, but focusing on the things that are interesting to you and what are the latest things that are happening in that space specifically.
yeah, that's good advice, I think.
Yeah.
Like, or did you mean that's a question?
No, I
Sorry,
mean in
maybe I.
general, like you can
No,
comment on it. Yeah.
yeah. No, I think that's a good advice.
Yeah.
Like, do what interests you.
Yeah.
Like, be curious and be nice to other people.
Oh
That's
man,
important.
that's big too. Um, yeah, and that's a good transition into like, as we wrap up, like, you know, I really appreciate your time and it's been great chatting with you. And for the folks that aren't following Patrick or kind of checking out some of the stuff that he's been building, you can find him on a bunch of different social media platforms. There'll be links down below. Probably the one of the best ways is probably Blue Sky these days. And you can find him at Patrick Svensson. So PatryKSvenson.SEV. And um,
No, only SE.
SE, so not SEV.
Yeah.
Um, so that'll be down below in the show notes. And yeah, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciated chatting with you about kind of how you got started and your thoughts around certain things. Before we sign off, do you have any parting words?
Uh, Great question. Let's stick with what I said before. Be nice.
Yeah,
Everyone be nice to each other.
being nice is essential these days, that's for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I really enjoyed my time with you today, friend, and I enjoy the
Yeah.
folks that
Same.
are tuning in live and the folks that are listening in the future. My name is Isaac Levin. This has been Coffee and Open Source. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. From my friend Patrick, take care.